very much for coming out on an early February evening to join us this evening for this talk on climate justice and community rights, or this panel on climate justice and community rights, hosted by Friends of the Earth and Trócaire. I'm Oisin Coughlin, I'm the Director of Friends of the Earth Ireland, and we're delighted to have with us tonight two distinguished guests from the Global South with whom ourselves and Trócaire work in different ways. Our keynote speaker is Ricardo Navarro from El Salvador, who's the director of Friends of the Earth El Salvador, which is an organisation called SESTA. And we're also joined by Silas Siakor, who's a former director of Friends of the Earth Liberia. So we have both an African perspective and a Latin American perspective on the issues we're going to talk about. Both of them work closely with Trócaire as partners of Trócaire. Both for Liberia are both Silas is wearing one of his hats, and SESTA as FO El Salvador work with Trócaire. And we work very closely with Trócaire on climate justice, both through the coalition that many of you will know, Stop Climate Chaos, and then directly with themselves and Cuishnet and Oxfam on some of the more detailed policy stuff that goes on climate change in Ireland. So we're delighted that Trócaire brought Ricardo here for various events, and that they've agreed to host this evening with us. And we hope it will be an interesting talk. SESTA works on climate change, it works on waste, it works on agriculture, but Ricardo has spent a lot of time over the last many years talking about climate justice, and indeed in his talking in that and through SESTA, he was for 5 years chair of Friends of the Earth International. Friends of the Earth International is a federation of 75 national autonomous environmental networks in their own countries, or organisations in their own countries, of which Friends of the Earth is the Irish chapter, the Irish branch. So we're very proud to have two of our sister organisations here this evening, and we look forward to hearing what Ricardo has to say. So the format of the evening will be Ricardo will speak for about 20 minutes. We'll take some questions directly for him, and then ask Silas, I'll introduce Silas a bit more then, and ask Silas to respond from his own perspective as an environmental activist in Africa, who knows Ireland a little bit better than Ricardo. He spent more time here. And then Cliona from Trócaire will speak a little bit about how Trócaire and indeed Friends of the Earth work is inspired and informed by the perspectives of our sister organisations and partners in the Global South. And then we'll have more time for questions and answers. So I will hand you over to Ricardo.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll try to give you a perspective of climate change from El Salvador. First, we believe climate change for us is a struggle for survival. Because we hear in the United Nations, talking about mitigation and adaptation. Of course, that happens for some parts of the world. But for many parts of the world, it's just survival. Survival. It's not adaptation, it's survival. This is the capital city of San Salvador. It's not a river. Those are streets that, people go, but this time of the year, after rains, you get all floods. You can see. This happens almost once a year in my country. And this is the rural areas, the same situation. This is also another thing that we've been working in the past with Trócaire, as a matter of fact. You can imagine how difficult it is for any of us to face a hurricane or a big rains and all that. Now, can you imagine what happens if you have to use a wheelchair? The situation becomes very complicated. And what about when some kids have some problems, some mental problems? Believe it or not, sometimes the government prepares a community house for emergencies, and they forget to have access for wheelchairs. Sometimes even the toilets, you cannot get with a wheelchair, Despite the fact that we have some 15–17% of the population, remember we have a big war, that may one way or another require some assistance. So this is one of the things we're working with a lot of people with handicap, that they should be the first sector.
Whatever, on climate change, what year is this in?
Every year there is one.
Yeah.
Every year? Yeah, every year there is one.
Yeah, but Barack Obama promised to do a lot but it seems as if kind of hands are tied, he changed. Didn't he say he'd do a lot if he were elected, he would kind of take on climate change as one of the main
Yeah, he said that, but the role of the United States is to put obstacles to everything. You know, like I remember in Copenhagen, the guy from the United States said, "I don't acknowledge that we are responsible historically for emissions." That's like saying, "I don't acknowledge the law of gravity." I mean, you can say anything you want, but the truth is there. We can count the numbers, you know. And what is the United States doing? Putting obstacles to everything. At least the European Union is saying, okay, we can reduce 20%, but if everybody agrees, we can go 30%. The United States, no. The United States, I think something like 4% they have promised. And now they say, okay, for 2020, I mean, there'll be a lot of people. According to the Global Humanitarian Forum, every year, 300,000 people die because of climate change related issues. And politicians should act on that. They don't. You know?
Do you think that over the years there's been an increasing role for regional politics in Latin America to work together on the issue of climate justice? Or do you still find the countries are still quite separate in their dealings with it?
Some, but politicians, even the left, they are more permeable. I mean, you can talk to them a little bit more, but not enough. Because still, you see, a lot of these initiatives, they are within the context of economic growth. You know, we have to be big and stronger. And climate change is not really taken seriously. You know, we have problems every year. In the 1960s and 70s, in my country, we had a disaster every 10 years. Now we have a disaster every year. The last one, one of the photos I was showing you, the government said, we lost $900 million, damages. They got $50 million loan from the World Bank to deal with that, out of 900. And this happens every year. You know? So we are really mounting all these problems more and more and more. And governments don't react. Governments don't react, you know. I mean, we should be promoting bicycles everywhere, you know. And then, well, cars are more important. You know, big roads, we are opening a big road for, lorries and things. And bicycles, well, sometimes, a little lane over here. But it's not really considered as something important. That's the problem.
I suppose, quite a lot comes down to people actually seeing positive possibilities for living differently. You mentioned bicycles and big motorways. Would you say in El Salvador any progress has been made towards finding a different way of living for people, to actually living it out?
Yeah, in local communities only, in faraway communities, people are trying, for example, defending their forest or taking care of their little wells or agroecology or processing their own wastes or having some little schools where they don't allow you to have all this junk food, but rather some dried food, dried bananas, for example, that kind of stuff. Little initiatives there are everywhere, everywhere. Even if you go to the United States, you'll find some good initiatives in that sense. But politically, they don't represent a strong force. That's the problem.
But if they got strong, do you not think that would develop political?
Certainly so. As a matter of fact, we are working in Central America with what we call climate change victims and affected people's movement. And we are having a conference October 31st, November 1st for that matter. How these movements get together and start exerting pressure. In some places we have won some battles, like avoiding something to happen, that kind of thing. But they have been just 1, 2, 3, kind of isolated. So our ambition now is to work to develop a strong political movement led by people who are victims. And I'll tell you, sooner or later, all of us will be victims, in one way or another.
One hand up, 2 more hands, and then I'm going to go to the next bit.
Yeah, I was just asking you, Dr. Navarro, do you think that it's already too late to reduce the flooding in El Salvador, or is there hope that if we act, that the disasters won't be as frequent, or is it too late?
Well, this is like if we are on the boat and the boat is sinking, and you ask me, do you think we'll make it to the coast? I'll tell you, let's swim. The coast is far away, let's swim. We will make it to the coast. Let's swim. This is the issue, you know. Let somebody figure out if it is too late or not. Let's work on it. That's the issue, because we have no alternative. That's the point. No alternative. You know, when the boat sinks, you can decide whether you die there or you try to survive. And for us, survival is the name of the game. Survival. You know, certainly, the situation is very complicated. Because when people tell me, for example, how do we stop the sea level rise and it's going to get to the community in a few years? I mean, that's a very hard question to answer. I mean, I don't know how to stop the sea level rise. You know, I mean, how do you stop the sea level rise? You know, that because it's a worldwide problem, and even if we stop now emitting, all the inertia continues. The sea level is going to increase, you know, a few more centimeters every year. So my response to that is, let's try to do the best we can. You know, but it's late, certainly, it's urgent. Let's work harder than that.
And certainly, I mean, as you probably know, governments, even the likes of the US, have said that they think that their objective is to limit global warming to no more than 2 degrees above the average temperature globally before the Industrial Revolution. Although they're not acting like they mean that. But even if those of people who follow the numbers are saying the chances now of doing that are becoming slimmer and slimmer, the difference between 2 degrees and 3 or 4 degrees is such that, although it may be becoming very difficult to meet 2 and we should still hold on to that target, you don't just sort of relax, well, if we don't meet 2, there's no point in trying, because the difference between 2 and 4 is a world of difference. Just before we move.
But even regarding 2 degrees, look, now we have 0.8 degrees. 300,000 people killed every year. To say limit to 2 degrees, it would be like saying limit to 1 million people killed every year. Now, if I ask you, how many people you think we should accept being killed? Children dying out of hunger. How many? How many women should we accept to be killed by their men every year? None. Right? None. Of course there are going to be killed every year. There are people who are going to die out of hunger every year. All that is going to happen, but what should be our acceptance? None of them. What does that mean? It means let's look at the causes and let's work to get rid of the causes. We shouldn't go back to what the environment was. You know, as far as CO2 is concerned, 280. Not even 350, because there is a famous organization claiming for 350. We should go back to 380. Because if there is one person that is dying, it's too many. How many people should we accept being killed in the streets for delinquency? None. We know it's going to happen, because, you know, we know it's going to happen. But we should not accept none. So, my concern with that acceptance of 2 degrees is that we're accepting too much already.
Catherine.
I was just wondering, in the general public, what's the awareness that climate change is causing these problems? Will a lot of people be aware of that?
Curiously enough, in Latin America there is a lot of awareness. Perhaps not because of what we talk, perhaps because of the hurricanes. You know, when there is a big hurricane, I mean, people say, God, this is too much. And people realize that. You know, the peasants, they know, should I plant or not? The climate is changing, they say. Climate is changing. Climate is changing. So there is an awareness for that. You know? And we are also concerned that, as I said, sea level rise is not something we can deal with. It has to do with the world thing. You know, climate change, for good or bad, is a planetary phenomenon. It's a problem. It's a worldwide problem. And we have to deal with worldwide issues. You know? And emissions, for example, in the north, when all these carbon credits, you know, like other people have to reduce. I mean, people who are consuming a lot should reduce emissions also. You know, this is like if you are Catholic, you know, and you are sinning, you can keep sinning and pay somebody else to pray for you. I mean, it doesn't work that way.
Thank you, Ricardo, on that note.